Welcome, everyone. I'm going to call to order the Tuesday, September 14th meeting of the Ross Valley School District Board of Trustees. This is our regular meeting, again, Tuesday, September 14th, and it is 6:15. We will start the meeting going into closed session for approximately 45 minutes. We have one item in closed session, which is a conference with legal counsel of anticipated litigation. Litigation on a special education program dispute. So I will go ahead and recess into closed session, and we will be back in about 45 minutes. Okay, welcome back. We are reconvening in open session for the Tuesday, September 14th regular board meeting of the Ross Valley School District Board of Trustees. It is 7:06, and as I said, we are reconvening in open session. So welcome everyone who is just joining us. We are going to move into what we always start every meeting with at the Pledge of Allegiance. And before we do so, I just wanted to make another comment about celebrating. Tomorrow is the beginning of, or acknowledging, tomorrow is the beginning of the month of Hispanic and Latino Heritage Month. And one of the reasons why I sometimes bring this up before we say the Pledge of Allegiance is just because the pledge is really a time where we acknowledge and appreciate coming together in unity and that concept. And so also introducing the concept that we're celebrating not just the unity and solidarity in our civic spaces, but that unity comes from our plurality, and that our one nation is made up of many, and where the liberty and justice that is part of that pledge is for all, regardless of race or abilities or family background or religion or income, gender, or sexual orientation. So it's a good time to both celebrate the unity and the solidarity, and then also our plurality. And so in doing so, this is the time in which we are honoring the contributions of people with roots in Central America, South America, Spain, and the Spanish-speaking nations of the Caribbean as part of Hispanic Heritage Month or Latino Heritage Month. The month started with under President Lyndon B. Johnson as a week, and then evolved under President Ronald Reagan into law in 1988 as an entire month. And the reason why this particular month is September 15th is the start of the Hispanic Heritage Month is because it is the month in which there are many anniversaries of independence for a lot of Latin American countries. So Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua all have their independence days during this month. Mexico's Independence Day is on September 16th. Chile is on September 18th. And also Dia de la Raza is October 12th. So that all falls within this 30-day period. And hence we are celebrating National Hispanic and Latinx Heritage Month. So welcome to that Heritage Month. And in doing so, let us say our Pledge of Allegiance for everyone who would like to join in. All right, unmute yourself if you would like to join in, and we will go. 1, 2, 3. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. We will now adopt the agenda and the time allocation. So I'm going to ask my colleagues if anyone has any amendments to the agenda for the day. Is there any amendments for agenda or consent amendments?
We do want to pull one item off of consent, and we'll do that at the time when we get to that agenda item. Just to give everybody a heads up, it's item C3, the cars, and I'll explain when we get to the consent agenda.
So other than that, we've got no amendments. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
Just 1 second, it's actually F3
F3. Oh, yes, you are right. Thank you so much. F3. Sorry. This is the protocol items. That's C, F, F3. Thank you.
So moved, Ryan.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and we'll do a vote. Ryan,
Aye.
Wesley,
Aye.
Marie,
Aye.
Rachel,
Aye.
and Shelley, aye. All right, moving on to communications. So public comment regarding items on and not on the agenda. I believe we have several of them, so just wanted to check in and make sure that everybody on the board got those.
There is just one on public comment.
Okay,
Yeah.
just one on public comment. So now, if you haven't seen that one, now would be the time to say it, but if, I'm assuming everybody's read them since we normally do.
Yeah.
And are there any board announcements? Is there anything that's the next item, other than we'll get to committees, but any other board announcements? Hearing none, going once. Okay, no board announcements. And now correspondence and communication with the board. Also an information item, again, just checking in, making sure everybody was able to go ahead and read those as they come in. So let us know if anybody had any trouble on that. And going once again, hearing none, great. We will take that as everybody's had a chance to read that. And then report out from closed session. So tonight's closed session, on anticipated litigation, there was no action taken on tonight's closed session, so there's nothing to report out, which brings us to our presentations and action items. And our first one is update number 3 on the return to school. So Marcy, you want to?
Shelley, I apologize. This is Wesley.
Yeah.
Can I return to item D3 real quick?
D3, correspondence communication.
Yes. So it's my understanding, Shelley, that we are going to be going back to in-person board meetings shortly.
Yes.
When are we proposing to be back in person? Sometime in October?
Yes, we do have that item on tonight's agenda under board business, and our first meeting in October is October 12th, and that is the meeting to resume in person.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'd forgotten that we were going to be discussing that later.
No worries. It's just a good preview, but so at that time we'll go over back to what you were talking about in terms of the correspondence and all of that kind of stuff under that item.
Okay, sorry to interrupt your flow.
No problem. All right, back in the flow. Update on returning to school.
All right, thank you. Can I just double check that what's showing up on everyone's screen is the update number 3 slide?
Copy
deck?
that.
Great. All right, awesome. Okay, and tonight we have Maria Lubomirsky, White Hills Assistant Principal, Eric Sable, Director of Human Resources, and myself providing this update. So thank you both, Eric and Maria, for joining me this evening. And I will start us off with, this is Marin County Health and Human Service status update that they provide. They provide that daily, and I do subscribe to their updates. So I like to read and keep up to date on any COVID numbers around the county, any information that they're sharing. So I thought this was of interest to take note that what they provided was comparative data information between last school year and our current school year to date. Marin Health and Human Services is maintaining their schools dashboard for all Marin County private and public schools. And to summarize, what this slide shows is that we are under fewer restrictions this year, such as in the areas of travel, gatherings, physical distancing, events, activities, etc. But yet we do have requirements and recommendations in place so that we can keep our schools safe. And basically these other mitigation strategies in place of what was in place last school year, such things like we now have vaccinations, and hopefully soon we're going to get an update at our upcoming meeting this week with Health and Human Services to learn more about the youngers vaccinations, but right now it's 12 years and up. as well as we have some testing, mask wearing this school year that's in place, as well as our cleaning hygiene. And so what we can see is that the case rates in our schools is lower than would be anticipated. Since last school year, when they started keeping track, we were under much stricter protocols. And so when this next slide is going to show what the data has actually provided for this year. And so when we started out thinking about coming back to school this year, the case rates were very high. But since schools have started back up this fall, the rates in Marin County have steadily declined. So since September 3rd, which is when the county started maintaining data for this school year, there have been 71 students and staff who have tested positive and 4 suspected school-based transmissions. So of all the schools in Marin County, to date, there are 71 COVID positive students and or staff. And what we continue to see is that schools are safe places to be, likely because we do provide structures, supervision, supportive environments. And then later in tonight's presentation, I'll come back with data about our own RVSD schools. But this data here is to show countywide between all of the public and private schools. So since school started, there's been a rapid decline. I think when I saw the latest update today, there were 18 more cases since yesterday. And just a few weeks ago, we were hovering at well over 30 to 40 per day. And so this is nice to see that we're starting to see, even with the Delta variant, that is a much more virulent and potentially dangerous strain, as has been reported, that we're seeing decline in Marin County. So that's great news. And with that, Maria.
Thank you. So we have become accustomed to changing with the rapidly changing guidelines, and there have been 3 updated changes already since the new school year started. This first one is that physical distancing protocols are no longer required for school staff who visit and instruct more than one classroom. And so that's no longer required, but we will continue to document, record any visits to assist in contact tracing. Then the next update the second update is that large gatherings are now prohibited indoors. An example of a large gathering would have been our recent back to school nights. The elementaries did not have their traditional group gathering, but parents and guardians went directly to the children's classrooms, and the number was 1 parent or guardian per household. At White Hill, we did hold a large gathering outside at the beginning to introduce everybody, and then it was 1 parent or per guardian that went into the child's class. And then the third update, the last, is regarding lunch serving and assigning seats to support contact tracing. All of our schools have already been serving lunches outdoors, and each of our schools has systems in place to support contact tracing should there be some report of a positive case and someone is sitting next to someone, they're close contact. We're working on what we'll do on rainy days. It is likely that all of our schools will continue to utilize the plans that they put in place last year once we resume to in-person instruction.
And I did see in today's update from the health and their daily update from MHHS that it looks like there may be some further guideline updates. So this is just the latest. So that's, we all will recall they put out 32-point guidelines at the beginning of the year. And this is now the 3rd update, and only 3 of the 32 guidelines have been updated, but this is their 3rd iteration this school year where they've been. So what we know is that with the continued development of this pandemic and as it goes through, they keep refining, which is great. And we are so thankful that we have Marin Health and Human Services to support us and guide us through the continuation of the pandemic.
Yeah, and we just adapt and adjust as they're as they're changed and updated. All right, so also a couple days ago, the guidelines for extracurricular activities, and this impacts White Hill a lot because of the sports. We were planning to start sports. This also applies to any performing arts, music, drama, choir type of thing, activity as well. But these guidelines, there are 8 of them. The first 3 you see here are about masks being required indoors for all participants, coaches, personnel, and spectators. And then the recommendation is that it's safest to limit the high-risk activities to vaccinated participants. So for unvaccinated, number 3 participants, it's recommended that they get regular testing. And then the next 5, these were, by the way, there's a link. This is the link. These were summarized by Marcy. If you click on the link, they go into a little more detail. And the number 1 is exactly how it was because it has the links in there. So she put that in there, but the rest are kind of summarized if you want to look at them more or ask any questions. So the next 5, it's just when practicable, relocate high-risk activities outdoors. They really recommend outdoor activities over indoor. And to remind participants and their families the importance of prevention on and off the field, because once people are getting together and it's okay to do this outdoors, people tend to forget of the recommendations. Locker rooms should be limited. Congregating inside a locker room, definitely limited. It recommends the longer, lengthier version of this recommends that the players come ready to go and you minimize locker room usage. Masks are required in any transportation. When carpools are recommended to stay with the same carpool and the same people, that probably like a pod. And then overnight travel is considered high risk and it's not recommended.
And the good news is we don't do much overnight at all with our sports activities. In the past, there, as you may recall, there have been some overnight field trips for music. As an example, they might travel to a festival. So we'll be waiting on that. The good news is those tend to happen in the spring, not the fall. And so by then there may be updated information and hopefully our students will be able to participate if we are planning to attend any of those this year.
So what
thank
this
you.
mean,
Yep.
one last thing I just want to say is what this means for us at White Hill is that we are working now with the schools across the county, the middle schools across the county, since each school might adhere to these guidelines differently, but we have to together, because we're getting together, we're competing, we all have to be on the same page. So we're working with them right now before we roll out the sports.
Thank you. And that's a lot of work. So on top of doing everything to keep our students in school learning, providing these activities for the students is extremely important to their development and part of their school experience. So thank you so much, Maria, Matt, and staff for continuing to provide all the extra supports as well as the activities that our schools they're so important for our students. So thank you. And especially for working with other schools too, because that can certainly be a challenge as we're trying to coordinate not just our own schools, but across schools throughout the county. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, and next up is Eric Sable. So thanks so much, Eric.
Oh, thank you. And just to reiterate Marcy's point, to really appreciate and acknowledge the incredible work that's had to go into every single communication anytime there's been an exposure, and from our nurse Megan O'Hare to the principals, to the administrative assistants in the front office and all the auxiliary communications that support those community messages. It is a tremendous amount of time. And I know that other teams and other districts are feeling that same pressure. And I would say, honestly, that reopening schools this year in 21-22 has been a lot more complicated than it was exactly a year ago because of the fact that we're all together. And of course, that's what we want and prefer. But it makes things more complicated. And what I'm sharing here is the Marin Health and Human Services decision trees for schools as the data is reviewed and the case rates go up or down. They will make revisions to these decision trees as appropriate. This slide shows the current vaccinated decision tree that was updated August 30th. And then the next slide. The next slide shows the unvaccinated decision tree, and both of these decision trees help our school teams know how to respond when students or staff members exhibit symptoms, are exposed and or test positive.
Eric, can you hold on a second? The slide didn't seem to change.
It did, unfortunately. I put in the wrong
Okay.
screenshot. So the link at the top is correct for unvaccinated, but
Right.
unfortunately, so sorry about that.
All right.
Anyway, so what it'll show is, again, the decision tree for the unvaccinated. And so that's part of the complexity of what we're dealing with, is that, you know, we're kind of working with sort of two categories in the population where, you know, most of our older kids are going to be vaccinated, but again, up to, you know, age 12, those children are not, at least up till now. So anyway, this is just showing, I think, is a great visual representation of all the different considerations that those teams have to take into account when they're contacting families, when they're doing the contact tracing, really trying to understand the nature of the exposure. Moving forward to the next slide, like last school year, Health and Human Services has developed exposure protocols and action steps for schools to follow, as well as sample communications to send to staff and parents, guardians. Hopefully our members of our community watching tonight haven't had to get those, but maybe they have. The decision trees and exposure protocols are really helpful to us as they provide a roadmap that parents and guardians can follow at home prior to sending their child or children to school if they experience symptoms, test positive, or have been exposed as well for our schools to follow. Having these resources available really does help us to keep all of our children, staff, and families healthy and safe. And again, and I go back to last year and to this year, you know, we really want to acknowledge and honor the partnership that the parents have shown in terms of being communicative and proactive with us when their children present symptoms or when there's been an issue where they've tested positive or had an exposure. Again, and that communication, that proactive outreach helps us keep any potential exposure at school to a much smaller degree.
Thank you, Eric. Any questions so far? Shelley?
Marcy, could you just go over again the modified quarantine and the quarantine and how it's connected to masks? Because I remember that's one of the, and I know our parents and kids have been doing an excellent job wearing masks, which is great because I don't think it's on here, so you might just do verbally, but there's a difference. If there's an exposure without a mask, then students go to the full quarantine, but it's the with a mask that allows them to do the modified, I believe. And I just thought that was I just want to make sure that I have it correct, because I think that's a really helpful piece of information for families and kids to realize how important wearing a mask is, not just about transmitting, but it's also could have an impact on whether kids have to quarantine or not.
Yes, yeah, and so the decision trees, they do outline the protocols to take, or the actions to take, I should say, whether the student or staff member, person involved is vaccinated or unvaccinated, and then of course, masked or unmasked, because there is the close contact too. So even though physical distancing isn't a requirement, it does come into play in contact tracing. So the closer that the persons are in proximity to each other, the more likelihood that they will need to go into some kind of a quarantine, whether it's a modified or a full. And so, shoot, my printed version.
It's okay. I just was,
yeah.
You know, I mean, I know it's all,
yeah,
people can click through. If you just, I would just wanted to highlight it so that if people wanted to get the connection between the quarantine and the modified, it's part of that decision tree and it's related. I just wanted to make sure that I believe it is related to masking. So I wanted to just highlight that for people.
Yes, all aspects are, they're all integrally related too. Yeah, so it is important, and it's complicated because this is now the second iteration of the decision trees. I think at our August 24th meeting, when we did our last update, there was a different set of decision trees.
Yeah.
So this is our second or our third this year as well. Related to the exposure protocols, this did just come out within the last week. And so this is super helpful because there provides the template of letters. Luckily, before this exposure protocols were put out, we did receive sample letters to use because of course we did have some notifications that needed to be provided. And so our schools did find, as well as some other schools in Marin County, needed to be able to be ready with those. So that was helpful, but this is super helpful to be able to go to and know exactly for a school office staff member to be able to follow and know exactly who to notify and report to information to. Alrighty, so what we know is that for our schools to be healthy and safe requires the cooperation and support of everyone in our community. And so as Eric mentioned during one of his slides, is that it definitely is a partnership between all of our students, their families, their parents, guardians, and other family members, as well as all of our staff. Because with us all doing each of our parts, that's a way that we can keep, even if our schools don't close or classrooms don't close per se, we need our kids to be in school. And so the healthier we can keep them and all of our staff to not have to be absent from school is going to keep our education moving forward for all of our kids and keep that support going. And so we're thankful, as Eric mentioned too, that all of our families, they're being very responsive as well. They may be working, but if they need to come to school to pick up their child, they're doing so. And so we really appreciate the partnership of not sending their kids to school sick, of being able to report when there's been an exposure or a positive case, either other student or a member in the household, because that helps us to know exactly, for that contact tracing, especially that it is extremely time consuming. The amount of time that our school sites have dedicated from the AAs, the principals, Nurse Megan O'Hare, any other staff on campus to help support all the notifications and contact tracing to report to Marin Health and to put there's also a system that they have to upload and put information into called SPOT. I don't remember what the acronym stands for, but when there is a positive case, that reporting is time consuming to do that as well. And so as much as we had hoped that we would be back into the school year this year and being able to resume all of our regular activities, on top of it is the extra time and the need to be meticulous and accurate with all of the reporting information, because this is about health and safety. And one of our major priorities in our district is the health and safety of all of our students, staff, and families. So I do want to acknowledge that it is taking all of us and in our RVSD community to help ensure that our students and staff are in schools and are healthy. And that's absolutely important. And also the collaboration with MCOE and MHHS. I'm in a listserv, and I often receive requests through that listserv for sample letters and information and how is your district handling this. And I just have to say that if it weren't for the support that we're getting through MCOE and MHHS, I think we'd be like a lot of these other districts. It's enough of a burden and very stressful to implement the protocols, the guidelines, just as they are. But if we had to create them ourselves or seek them, that would make this work that much more difficult to do. And so I just want to acknowledge that. And with that too, very happy to report that MCOE and MHHS continue to provide updated information and current support. And one of the latest examples is the pilot rapid antigen testing and reporting program to help prevent the transmission of COVID-19. That's being implemented in our Marin County schools. And unfortunately, with the testing availability being low right now, there are only a few schools, 9 total in Marin County, who are able to participate. And luckily, Manor School has been selected, and that had to do with when Mary Jane Burke, our county superintendent, put out an email saying they were beginning to work in partnership to create this pilot. I responded in knowing that we were interested in participating, but because of the low test availability, our school with the smallest population was selected to participate. So we're going to be rolling that out this week. I'll be meeting with Peg Minacozy, principal at Manor, with the staff tomorrow, and then we'll be sending the parent letters out tomorrow afternoon. We did practice with a student at Manor yesterday, and so very thankful to that student's parent for letting us practice and make sure that we are ready to roll out our pilot program. And so that was super helpful. And I'm pleased to report it was a negative test result. So that's even better for that student. But that'll be super helpful because then as students or staff are symptomatic, they can do a rapid test. And with the results of that, a positive is a positive and a negative is a negative. And so by being able to do the test right then and there for a symptomatic person is able to keep the kids and the staff members in school, and or the families, the staff members, to be able to get in touch with their healthcare provider should they have a positive test. The school can begin implementing immediately contact tracing and any type of needing for other students or staff members to possibly quarantine, whether it's on the modified or the full. And so we think this will be super helpful, and we're pleased and happy to be part of the pilot, because if it works out, then what CDPH is going to be doing is to be rolling this out statewide. And so that all of our students, all of our schools in California will have access to the rapid antigen tests. So the one that we're piloting is called Binax Now. And there's a lot of information that's going along with it. And because the way that the tests originally came, they were in a 2-pack test kit. But again, because of the low numbers of tests available, I'm very thankful to Marin County Office of Ed, who was able to provide us packaging materials, and then to Teresa Machado, who has taken apart over 312 2-test kit packs and individually packaging them. So Teresa, thank you so much for helping. This is a group endeavor. It is a multi-pronged approach, and every single employee in our district is supporting in one way or another all of our COVID efforts. And so so thankful for everybody in our schools community. And any questions on that before I move on? Alrighty, so one of the areas that we're going to next do is we are going to revisit our COVID funding expenditure plans and resources. And the reason is now that school has started, we have been able to fill some of, not all, but all of our plans that, positions that through our extended learning opportunity plan that you all approved last June. We now know who are the folks sitting in those positions. So now we can make sure we firm up our spending. In the event, for example, that some of our folks may cost less than what we anticipated, now we have freed up money to be able to spend elsewhere. And as the school year has unfolded, we have seen what we did not anticipate needing to do, as an example, is to have hand washing stations at White Hill again. And so we put those back on campus. And also to support the health and safety. For example, our water fountains are outdoors, and anybody could come and do anything with those, and to be able to keep up and monitor the disinfecting of those. So one other element that we're doing to support all the students, staff at schools, is to put in touch-free water bottle filling stations. So we're able to utilize our COVID dollars to help support keeping all of our students and staff hydrated. And so bringing water bottles to school and that kind of thing. It also helps in a bigger picture of conservation and ecology for having less waste. And so with reusable water bottles, that will be helpful on multi-fronts. And so we know that the end of October, we do need to come back to revisit our ESSER, which is the elementary and secondary schools emergency relief funds. the board will need to take another look at that expenditure plan and make approvals. So Chris and I, our business manager, will be meeting tomorrow afternoon to dig in and start to take a look at our expenditures. And then we'll be coming back to our getting input from our administrative teams and other members of our constituency to see, are there any other things that have been identified to be able to support the full implementation of school and our students' academic and mental health, social, emotional, supports needed for all of our students. And of course, our mental health, because part of our plan this year too, is to support our staff. And we know that with, hopefully with the antigen testing that's going to be coming out, and hopefully if everything goes well with President Biden ramping up home test kits and making them more accessible, that we're hoping that by the end of October, we will be able to provide much more testing for all of our students and families throughout our schools. So that'll be coming along hopefully soon. So any questions so far? All righty. Since our last update, our dashboard has gone live. And so we talked about this. We have started our, it's a title change, and it looks a little different this year, where the, on our landing page, main page of our website, right here, front and center is our COVID mitigation, and it's our resources for the 21-22 school year. And so clicking on that takes you to a whole listing. It's where it houses our dashboard, our the handbooks, and all of the information that you've seen previously. So the decision trees, the exposure protocols, there's information there that families and or staff members of the community can access. And with our dashboard going live, what we're doing with this is we're maintaining it for any of our folks who are on campus in person, which 99% of everybody is, but it's about the positivity rates for any of our employees, our staff on campus. So we're not keeping track in any way about maybe there have been positive cases, but those students never reported to school, so there is no exposure for anybody on campus. And so to date, or actually, let me go back. Our dashboard went live on August 24th. And last Thursday, it was updated on September 9th, and it'll be updated again this Thursday. And so we have a case rate that runs through in this center column here is the dates. So from 9/2 to 9/9, we had one positive case. And then we also list over off to the right in this section is the total cases since 8/18, once our schools started. So since our schools reopened on the first day of school, 8/18, we've had a total of 10 cases amongst students and 0 cases amongst employees. And with those, there have been 0 suspected in-school transmissions, which is fantastic to show that it is bound to be that folks are going to test positive. But if there are 0 transmissions on our campuses, that just goes to help to show us that all of our protocols and procedures that are in place are working to help prevent the spread and to help keep all of our students, staff, and of course, everybody goes home. So our families as well, healthy and safe. And so if we think back to that previous slide I showed with, there had been since September 3rd, 71 students and staff who have tested positive and 4 suspected in-school transmissions. That's countywide. And of those, we can see that 10 of the 71 of the positive cases have been in our schools. And but the good news is we have not had any school-based transmissions. So we'll continue to monitor and continue to update all of our guidelines and our protocols and practices. And where we see that shifts need to be made, of course, the school sites are doing that on a daily basis. At this time, all of our school sites are finalizing their site-specific safety plan or COVID support plans and, COVID site plans. And those will be posted to the website shortly. They're doing their last run through if they haven't finished them yet with their site task force. site task forces. But even in the absence of those being posted, all of the guidelines, the protocols are being followed, and they're in place at each of the schools. So with that, just wanting to see if there happen to be any questions with tonight's update. All righty then. Let me close this. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for that very, very
Please,
helpful.
thorough. Thank you. Yes.
And I mean, the update is great, but all of the work behind the update and all of the work that all the staff are doing and everybody in the district office to keep everybody healthy and safe, and as you said, in school and learning as much as possible is fantastic. Your approach and focus on that is very much appreciated.
And
I,
if I may
I second
add,
that, Shelley. This
Yeah.
is Ryan. I second that. I mean, it goes without saying. It's a lot of work. It's a nice synopsis and it sounds really clean when it comes off the tongue and no one really thinks about the level of work behind it, but that's very impressive. That's very impressive news.
and what I wanted to add as well is that I do appreciate that this is kind of one place to shop. If parents have not been updated for the last, 3-4 months and they want to find the links, then that's, and every parent is coming to COVID with different experience. They may be new in Marine, they may be new parents. So I think that what's good here that there is also some new links. So thank you for that. I think that could be very useful for some new parents or parents who just have kind of not been in touch with the latest on this topic. So thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah,
I
it is.
also wanted to say thanks for going out and letting Mary Jane Burke know that we were interested in doing a pilot with the Binax now, because I read about that in the IJ today, but I think it's fantastic. I know there's only 9 schools Marin-wide that were selected, and I think it's wonderful that one of ours was chosen. And I appreciate that we're being proactive in trying to find home testing options and getting in front of that as much as possible. So thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely is potentially an equity issue for families. I mean, right now, they're hard to come by, but when you're able to find them, they're expensive. And so whatever we can do to support our families is what we want to be able to do with that. So just hoping that by participating in this pilot, it will really help to ensure that all schools in our district, but also throughout the state of California, can get these tests in people's hands to be able to use. And then it also adds to the peace of mind. You know that you don't have to wait 3 days for a test result. Some folks do like to follow up and get that PCR test, which is just fine too, but this gives you that quick snapshot. And what Marin Health and Human Services has been working on is to be able to show, because one of the things that the county office needed to do with the 2 test kits, it is recommended by the company that you do take 2 tests. But with the data that they have based on these rapid antigen tests, is that the 1 test more often than not is sufficient. And so for helping us with our schools, of course, if anybody tests positive, they do need to remain home until they go through all the protocols that they need to make sure they're healthy. And even if they test negative, if they're symptomatic, they do need to remain home until all the symptoms subside. So that way we're not passing any other germs also at school, not just the COVID, but there are others. Colds are going around now too. So we just want to make sure, yeah, so our schools are safe and healthy. Okay, well, thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. Let's move on to the next item, which is discussion, information, and a vote around the recommended approval of an MOU with UCSF for the Dyslexia Center. Tell us a little bit about that.
All right.
Okay, thank you so much. Eric Sable, Director of Student Services. Really appreciate being able to share this with you. And it's a bit of a pivot from our last topic, but I'm extremely excited, and it's part of just one of the many reasons why I'm proud to be a part of this district team, because despite the many obstacles put in our way as a district, as a community, we're continuing to do big picture work. And something that we know in developing our LCAP, looking at academic achievement for all students, creating more equitable outcomes, along with greater social emotional wellness, greater parent engagement. We know for a fact that it is critical for us, along with any public school district, to provide as many universal supports as possible to all children. So that means that rather than waiting for a child to be in crisis, we provide a supportive school culture, we provide mental health professionals, we provide a great academic program that is also defined by assessment practices that help identify where students have strengths and where they need support. We don't wait for the end of the year final exam to figure that out. So I'm really excited and proud to share with our trustees and community tonight a proposed agreement in the form of an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, between our district and the University of California at San Francisco, which of course is a teaching hospital. And they reached out to us along with their partner Learning Ally, which is a digital platform that we use to support reading for many of our students in this district. And what they would like to do for this school year is to partner with our district to give a pilot run of their dyslexia screener for students TK to first grade. They've developed this screener, and now this is a part of the research process whereby they get to go out and field test it at a school with real live children. And what they want to do is identify one of our schools, one of our 4 elementary schools, to be able to come out and visit 3 times over the course of this school year to administer these screeners and come and do follow-up screenings. They would provide their own proctors, and really what our job would simply be to coordinate between their staff and our site team, making sure that the children are scheduled appropriately, that the teachers are aware of that schedule, to provide a quiet, orderly space in which the proctors can do this. And this is, and we may get a little bit of data out of this process, but really what this is an opportunity for us to do is to participate with an internationally respected learning institution to get ready for next school year, 22-23, their official validated screener, which we would have access to and which we would then be able to administer to all students TK through first grade in Ross Valley School District. So secondly, not only is it them coming to give this screener to the students to see if it to validate it through this pilot process. Next would be them coming to deliver professional development to our staff to help us better understand how to provide supports and interventions and best teaching practice in the classroom to help students with their literacy. And again, students may have different types of challenges when it comes to reading. And so we can't intervene in the same way for every child. And so they're also going to be partners to us in terms of really helping us continue to improve our professional practice when it comes to, first and foremost, delivering great instruction to all kids in the classroom, and then as appropriate, target interventions for students that are showing struggles. Because of course, what our job is to do is fundamentally is to make sure that all of our students have a strong literacy foundation, because we know that is only going to lead to strong academic outcomes and life outcomes as they move forward on their journey. This MOU comes at no cost to our district. Again, we feel that this also aligns very strongly with what we've been doing with our special education teachers and our English language learner and literacy support teachers in the district, investing in multiple trainings for them in Orton Gillingham based methodologies, Wilson reading system, and the Sonde multisensory reading system. And these are the people who also in our district are going to be leading professional development for their colleagues when it comes to how we're best supporting literacy practices across every classroom. I think I'll pause there, but what I want to say is that this opportunity is really exciting. And this is the kind of thing that our team was asking for long before UCSF reached out to us to be a partner. They have wanted to be able to have us implement universal screeners so that we're not just talking about the students that are showing struggles. We're able to get valid data on every single child, in this case, TK through 1, to make sure that we can intervene early so that those problems don't snowball later down the road. I think I'll pause just to see if there are any questions from trustees or anybody else.
Does anyone have any questions on this?
I
Only
think
thing,
this is exciting.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
Eric, the only thing that I was wondering was, I'm assuming, given the wonderful reputation and credibility of UCSF in these kinds of areas, is the connection between the work that they do regarding language acquisition and the what is often conflated with second language acquisition and dyslexia, and whether they have like an equity lens on this and a way of looking at that language acquisition and not misdiagnosing for a language issue when it's a second language acquisition. Because I know there are often misdiagnoses that aren't really diagnoses. It's more about that second language. They probably are totally well versed in this, but I just thought I would throw it out there and be explicit about it to say, if not, we could maybe look to bring that in. So
no, I really appreciate you bringing that up. And again, this is also something too that in the past has potentially been a practice in our society and special education. Students that are simply in the process of acquiring a second language, in this case, English, might be seen as having a particular deficit or a learning challenge when that's in fact not the case at all. So part of their project justification is actually to develop a more nuanced and accurate screener compared to the ones currently out there, which do measure foundational reading skills that are predictive of whether students will struggle with word recognition, spelling, or decoding on those norm referenced assessments at the end of the year. However, while those screeners might be successful at identifying students at risk, they can often falsely label large groups of students as needing intensive interventions that really are not necessary, because let's remember, our first goal is to support best teaching practices in the classroom, those tier 1 practices, that those universal practices that all students get to experience in their classroom. And what we don't want to have to do, if it's not necessary, is pull kids away from that environment to work with them in smaller groups. Now, sometimes that's the best practice. They need those more intensive, smaller targeted supports. So part of their whole project justification is to make sure that the screener they produce gives less of those false positives, if you will. And that includes for students that are English language learners.
great. So making it screen for the things that they intend to screen for and not screen for other, that's great. Thanks.
No, wonderful. That's just a great question to have brought up. Thank you.
Anything else? And this does have, so we are being asked, or it is being proposed to us that we do formally vote to approve the MOU, correct? So
That is correct. We're seeking board's approval.
okay. Any other questions before we move on to an action? All right. Hearing none, then we could move on to an action.
I'll move approval of the MOU.
I'll second it, Rachel.
Great. We have a motion and a second. Wesley,
Aye.
Rachel,
Aye.
Marie,
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Shelley, aye. All right. Thank you so much, Eric, again, for this is the night of taking advantage of opportunities that come our way. So thank you for doing that. And we look forward to hearing how it goes.
Well, thank you for your support, and at future board meetings, we'll make sure to provide updates on how the process is going. And thank you very much for the support.
Fantastic. All right, now we will move on to the recommended approval of resolution 042122, which is our standard and very regular approval or adoption of the GAN limit. So I know this is something that we do regularly. Chris?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening regarding our GAN limit. This is one of those perfunctory resolutions that we have to do each year related to our unaudited actuals. And what it does is it looks at our at the district spending in the year we just closed, as well as the budget year. So it would be 21, 22, and 2021. And it looks at tax dollars and how much has been appropriated and also spent by the district, and just ensures that our spending is in line with increases at the state level. And so again, it's just a perfunctory document that we in resolution that we take and is required under state law.
Great, just like a regular checkup. So we can, I'll go ahead and move that we adopt resolution 04-21.
Let's be sure we go out for.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
board discussion.
I was jumping ahead there. Sorry. I need to pause and see if anyone has any questions on the GAN limit. It was well described in the background narrative and all the documents, but anyone?
No questions.
Nope. Okay. Then I will open it. I'll open it up for anyone else who wants to make a recommendation or a motion.
I move the motion to approve the GAN resolution.
Yeah, I'll second.
All right, we've got the motion and the second. Marie,
Aye.
Wesley,
Aye.
Rachel,
Aye.
Brian.
Aye.
And Shelley, aye. Okay, motion passes and the resolution can move forward. Now we are on to the recommended approval of the 2020-2021 unaudited actuals financial report. And this, Chris, I believe is yours as well.
Yes, that is me as well. Let me see here. I want. And what you should be seeing is a copy of my presentation.
Correct.
It's up on the screen.
Okay, good. And so with that, this is a shorter presentation than I would normally provide just because it's closing out our books. And so as we look at it, the first thing that you will find here is just a general fund summary. And one of the things that has happened in the current fiscal year and also with the prior fiscal year in 1920 and 2021, due to the COVID shutdown, there's been a lot of changes in the budgets and in spending patterns. And so there's nothing different here as well. And so we do have more money than what we had at the end of the 1920 school year. We actually show excess balances in both the restricted and the unrestricted side. I'm breaking it apart a little different than what I may have done in the past, and I'm sure what Midge Hoffman, our previous CBO, had done. The Ross Valley School District has traditionally not had a large categorical program just by nature. We have very few categorical funds. And so when you talk about the restricted side of the general fund, it's generally pretty small. With COVID, we've had a large increase in these ESSER funds, which are the federal funds for COVID, as well as state COVID funds. And so when you look at those large dollars coming in, many of those funds were coming in after we did our second interim budget report, and you end up with large balances as we close out our fiscal year on the restricted side of $920,000. And that's primarily those dollars. And then the other side of that is we do have $710,000 on the unrestricted side, which is in line with what I was thinking when we were adopting the budget in June, but it is an increase in our general fund. This particular slide shows our ending balance trends, and this is really important to look at over a multi-year period, because it's not just the current year as we move forward to first interim budget in December that we'll be looking at. We'll also be looking at the subsequent 2 years. So what I'm showing you here is how we closed in 2021, as well as our the current fiscal year and 2 subsequent years. And as you look at this, what you notice is our ending balances, they're down here near, roughly in the middle. You see that our ending balances are $6 million in the current 2021 year as we closed out, 6.4 million in 21-22. And then you start to see drops. You do notice right below that, you have the restricted funds. Those are the categorical funds that we were talking about, things like those ESSER federal funds, as well as the state funds. As we start to spend down those dollars over the next several years, you'll see those. But then the other thing that I want to point out is, as we adopted our budget in June, one of the things that I pointed out at that time was that the third year of our multi-year projections, although we still had the 3% required minimum reserve, we weren't at the 10% reserve that the governing board has set aside as the target for the year, for each year. And as we look at our multi-year projections, as we have our budget currently, we do have an excess of above that 10%. And so you note that in the very bottom right number, 412,000. So based upon closing our books in the current year, that is where we're at. But then again, I also want to point out that you do see net decreases as we move into 22-23, as well as 23-24. And those have to do with the drop in enrollment that the district has seen, and the COVID. There's been a pause in terms of calculating our attendance. So the state has given us the ability, and for all districts, to continue to use your 1920 attendance numbers. And that's important to note, because that doesn't decrease our revenues fairly substantially as we move forward. And so you really see it in this next slide, looking at our ending balances. Again, these are our unrestricted ending balances. When we closed our books, we're at 20.52%. Next year, at the end of this current fiscal year, 21-22, we do expect to see another increase. That has to do with our current year attendance not being the amount that we're being funded on in our revenues. Will be funded based upon our 1920 attendance. And then you'd start to see the drop in our fund balances. So those are important things to keep an eye on, and things that we need to take a look at in terms of our revenues. And I see we have a question.
So Chris, the change, because I do remember that when you had presented our budget, that 2023-24 was under our 10% reserves, and
Right.
now it's over the 10% reserves. And that's simply an effect of closing our books. You haven't changed any of the budget assumptions or the enrollment assumptions. That comes later. This is
Correct.
just an adjustment based on the closing of the books, correct?
That is correct.
Excellent, thank you.
And we will be taking a look at those numbers in terms of our enrollment, our attendance, what the factors are for our local control funding formula as we move forward. Those get start to be revised as we move forward into our first interim budget in December. And so this next slide kind of talks about that enrollment number. And as you look at this, what you do see is that in 1920, we had enrollment of 2047. And then in 2021, we actually dropped to 1764 at our CBEDS date, which is the basic enrollment, California basic enrollment date. And that is always the first Wednesday in October. And so when people ask, what is your enrollment? That's the enrollment date that districts give, is that CBEDS date. So that's the 2021 number, 1764. We had estimated in the current year budget, 21-22, that we were going to have 1764. And as of the 10th day of enrollment, we had 1748. So we're in line with it, but it's something we'll be keeping an eye on as we move forward. It's an important number because enrollment is a major factor of what your total attendance is, because attendance is what you're paid on, but attendance is how many kids actually come to school every day, where enrollment is how many kids are signed up to come to school. So they kind of go hand in hand, and it's a very important number as we move forward in our revenues and our budget as a whole. As we start looking at other funds, it's not just the general fund that we're closing the books on. We're also closing the books on all of our funds, and the Fund 13, which is our cafeteria fund, which is how we pay for and offer food services to our schools. We have an ending fund balance of $28,000. We did have a contribution of $85,000 out of the general fund. We always have a contribution. It's one of those programs at the Ross Valley School District that doesn't fund itself, but with the programs that we offered this year, we did have $85,000 in general fund contributions. Fund 14 is our deferred maintenance fund, and that is the fund that we pay for a lot of the repairs and maintenance that goes on around the school. So things like roofs and asphalt and things of that nature, we fund out of this. And we closed the year with an ending fund balance of $198,000. Fund 21 is the bond fund. So that was our last tax measure that was approved by the taxpayers, and that has been fully spent out as of the previous fiscal year. But I wanted to make sure to show that again this fiscal year. Just to, I'll be removing it as we move forward, but it's something just to note. And then in Fund 25, which is our capital facilities fund, and these are the funds that we receive for things such as school fees when people pull permits to add to their house or to build new construction. They have to pay a fee for that, and it helps to offset the cost of housing new children. We do have $100,000 remaining in that particular fund. Fund 35 is our state bond funds. And at the end of the year, we had a remaining balance of $1,128. These are the funds that are modernization funds from the state. And the reason we started with such a large amount and show a lot of expenses is those were part of the projects under the Red Hill project here. And so as we move forward into the current year, those funds will be completely spent out, the remaining $1,000. We have some final invoices that will clear those out, and that'll be zero as we close out the current fiscal year. And then Fund 40 is the special reserve for capital facilities, and that's $301 is our ending balance. And that basically summarizes how we closed our books at the end of this fiscal year. And so, are there any other questions?
Don't hear any other, there might be one more, go ahead.
Have one.
Yeah, I have one. I was eating at the same time. Sorry for delaying. Can you back to your previous slide, Chris, please? Yeah, I would just wanted you to just take a few seconds to tell us about the Marin County loan, the 500K loan with the county.
Oh, yes.
Because I think it's an interesting one to hear a little bit more about.
Yes, so Fund 40 was also part of the Red Hill project. So those were some additional funds to help fund that. However, the total amount that the district had was just short of the total amount needed in order to complete the project. And there was a loan from the County of Marin, which was approved by the governing board. I want to say it was in October of 2020. But I would have to actually check that for the specific date. But that loan is being repaid approximately $100,000 a year. We did make our first payment in the 2020-21 fiscal year, and we'll be continuing to make those payments as we move forward. And as we look at our general fund, because they're going to be paid out of that, we also had some other debt that came off of the budgets. The other debt had to do with the solar projects that we had. Those projects have also ended, and that debt is now fully defeased or closed out. And so this Marin County loan will then just in essence take the place of that within our general fund. So from a district standpoint, it becomes a wash in terms of the total amount that the district will be paying, but we will be repaying this loan over the next several years.
Thank you, Chris. Very, very helpful.
Are there any other questions? All right. Going once, going twice. Just want to make sure we allow any other questions. And Chris, on this item, there is a recommended approval of, so this wasn't just a presentation.
Correct.
Great presentation, very helpful, but you are recommending approval and we do need to approve the unaudited financials. Correct. Okay.
And I want to make a motion to approve the 2021 unaudited actuals presented today.
All right, so we have a motion.
Second, Ryan.
Motion and a second by Ryan. So we'll go ahead with the vote. Marie?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Wesley?
Aye.
Rachel?
Aye.
And Shelley? Aye. Thank you very much for that, Chris. Appreciate how you broke out all that information into the different funds. It's very helpful to have all the discrete elements broken out rather than all just folded together and trying to decipher them. So thank you for the way that you presented that. Appreciate it. On to item number E5, which is recommended modifications to the salary schedules and employment contracts for the staff. So this is a continuation or a coming back to us of a conversation. We had kind of a more fulsome conversation in prior board meetings about this subject to explain how the restructuring of the district's human resources department was going to work. And so we've had that full presentation, and then that was coming back to us with a specific recommended action. So so tonight's agenda item is not meant to be a redo of the entire conversation, but specific to the action that we asked to have come back to us. So Marcy, if you want to talk about that action.
Sure. Thank you, Shelley. So tonight specifically, we'll be approving the Human Resources Coordinator. Currently, the position is titled Human Resources Specialist. So taking the elements of the duties and responsibilities of the HR Director position to provide that additional clerical support of our Human Resources Specialist is a new job description for that position. So that job description is here for you, as well as the salary schedule of the new HR coordinator position. Also tonight is the Director of Curriculum and Instruction salary schedule and our Chief Business Official's employment contract addendum, as well as my as superintendent contract addendum. And so this tonight is taking everything that you approved, as Shelley mentioned at the last board meeting on August 24th, and to be able to now do the final touches related to moving forward with salary as well as the job description for HR coordinator. So I just also wanted to put this on tonight to see if there were any additional questions or follow-up. I know as the robust conversation that occurred with the board at the last meeting, wanting to be sure that as part of this plan, because all of us have full plates, full positions as it is, to take on these additional responsibilities, we really appreciate your care and consideration for ensuring that we are not overburdening ourselves further, that this will be a doable plan. So building in places where we can put in checks and balances, have check-ins, regular check-ins, as well as to be sure that we can unpack the plan as needed. And also, as you mentioned at the last meeting, to be sure that we don't have the savings from not filling the Director of Human Resources position, but to ensure that the savings get held aside until we can be sure that this plan is successful in case we do have to unpack it and or hire additional clerical support to ensure that, that our HR functions are in the best interest of the district. We know that the human resources and our business office positions are two of the most critical that a district can have to remain a viable school district. And so I think we've done that. We've accomplished that through this plan, and just looking forward to seeing if you have any questions or anything since our last board meeting.
I just wanted to ask real quickly, just to take a poll. So you've had like a month to do these extra additional duties, and just wanted to see how those have been going for everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. It definitely, we're seeing the added additional duties and responsibilities. Of course, we knew we would. We do still think it is all doable. The beginning of the year is always the busiest. And also this year, because of, I think we all anticipated coming into the new school year, maybe not having so much of the impact of COVID. And we're seeing that the support that we need to provide to the sites, as well as all of our other initiatives and getting them ramped up, it's definitely, we're feeling it, but we still believe that it is completely doable. And we're checking in ourselves as staff on a daily basis to be sure that there's the training that's going into place to ensure that everybody is learning their new duties and responsibilities, have that support for learning, are supported as they are learning while they're still doing their other duties and responsibilities. But so far, so good.
Great.
Thanks, Marcy.
Thank you.
Hey, this is Ryan. I'll weigh in. I was always very excited about the opportunity to take, the people that are very skilled in these areas where I think this is a no-brainer, not just for the money savings, but I really think you have the right personnel to execute this plan. Again, the ability to make sure that we're checking back and making sure that it's working and people aren't burning out were certainly concerns. Or if there were any personnel changes, you might not be able to hire someone with the same credentials as Lori or the same credentials as you or Chris. Or so that's good. I mean, we're going to have to start to get to this type of outside the box thinking as numbers get tighter, as we see those projections coming in the future. But this is the kind of thinking that a really intelligent district will put together, provided that I don't think it's about the money compensation that concerns me at all. It's just about, can we do it? And I think that without COVID, that this may be something that would really be even easier for our crew here. And I don't want to take it apart that I think that the COVID aspect to what's happening in our school district and every school district is incredibly a lot of water to carry along with the regular duties of any regular job. So keeping that in line, if we can get to the light at the end of the tunnel with COVID, I think this is a no-brainer. But again, with the safety checks to make sure that we're going in the right direction is the key, because I would never want to lose any of the fantastic people we have because they took on too much. But I'm really excited about this. I think it's a great plan. I also like that you didn't just slip it into the consent, because I think you could have just put this in a consent and we could have just moved right along. But when it comes to your name on the paper and your check and the people, I think it's better for transparency to put that back out there, daylighted again, and let other people poke holes in the process just in case, so that there's no doubt. So I thought that was wise as well.
Thank you. I do feel a very big burden, I guess. The weight's heavy on the shoulders to ensure that all of our employees in the district are supported and that they have what they need in order to do their jobs and in order to be successful in them. And so I know how important this is in terms of taking a position that it was full-time, more than full-time. I used to do the job. So of course, I know exactly how many hours are spent in implementing the activities and duties and responsibilities. And so I think this is a really big deal for our district to look at downsizing in the way that we are, but acknowledging what you said, Ryan, based on Chris's last agenda item on the unaudited actuals, we do have some heavy lifting to go forward in the district to ensure that we remain fiscally solvent. So every chance we have, we take a look at what can we do to be sure that we are cost savings, because we know that in a district like ours, well over 80% of our budget is in humans. We are a human business, and it is the employees of our school district. And so it isn't any light feat to be able to have this be accomplished in order to best serve all of our employees in our school district, whether they're here with us now or will be in the future. But it's about attracting and retaining employees as well.
And I would also add, Marcy, I think also a certain level of confidence in the way that this has been put together, because you have such a long track record, both in human resources and with the district. So huge amount of confidence in your ability to, and creativity, and not creative, but innovation, being able to innovate, but professionally, responsibly, and with a lot of experience behind it and professionalism behind it. So we are very blessed to be able to have someone in your role who has this HR experience, given this particular circumstance and place that we are in at the moment with COVID and with restructuring. So thank you for leveraging your expertise for our district.
Thank you for your trust and your belief that we can do this, because I think we can. But if not, it wouldn't be the way that I look at it. It's a trial, right? And so if it doesn't work or some aspects don't, it's no indictment upon any one person or any attempt that we did. I think that in education, it's often hard, we have a hard time in education to shift and change as we're flying our airplane through the air. And so whenever we can take advantage and know that also we can try things, and if they don't work, we unpack them, we do them differently. But if we don't ever try, then we don't ever know. And I am a big proponent of taking a look at what we do, why we do it, and how we do it, and revisiting it to make sure that we are providing the best service, because as I've said before, none of us would be here if it weren't for our 3 to 14 on up year old students. And so we're here to best serve all of our students and our community. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
And I appreciate I'm sure that's a process that goes from board level all the way into the classroom in terms of understanding why we're doing what we're doing, unpacking it, repacking it as appropriate. So I'm glad that we can participate in that process as well. And it's a culture throughout the entire district that shows up in the classroom and district office and also in the board meetings. So are there anyone else who has any comments or questions, any other board members? All right, going once, twice. All right, then we can entertain a motion to take action on this agenda item.
So moved, Ryan.
Wesley, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion to approve the recommended modifications to the salary schedules and employment contracts for the staff. And we'll do with a vote. Ryan?
Aye.
And Wesley?
Aye.
Rachel?
Aye.
Shelley? Aye. And Marie?
Aye.
Okay, so moved. And we will hear back from you, I believe, on a regular basis to continue to ask the question Rachel asked, which is, so how's that going, Marcy? And you can
Absolutely.
give us the update.
Thank you.
All right, on to the last item on our presentation and action items, which is recommended approval of a request by the YMCA for rent relief. Want to tell us a little bit, tell us about this one?
Yeah. So historically in Ross Valley, our TK program has operated at one school specifically, but over the years, as the numbers have changed and as our kindergarten numbers have been what they have been, we've been able to operate the program in multi ways. This year, as an example, we had just the right number of TK resident students for Brookside at Hidden Valley to be able to do TKK combination classes. And then as it turned out, we had too many to be able to do that at Wade Thomas and Manor. And so we've implemented our TK program to where Brookside and Hidden Valley have TKK combos. And with knowing that our Wade Thomas and our Manor campuses were on opposite ends of our school district boundaries, San Anselmo, the very end of San Anselmo, and also very end of Fairfax, is knowing that if we needed to overflow or have the program housed at one of those schools, it would mean that families from the other school would have to drive all that way to drop off and pick up. And with many of our families doing the analysis, having older siblings in our schools, it just didn't seem to make a lot of sense for our families and for the implementation of our program. We know that many children did not have school last year, whether it was preschool. Many families kept their children home. So whether it was a preschool experience or a regular education experience, also for our families, with many families just returning back to work, getting out of the classroom, resuming in office attendance as well for them, that it would provide that added burden for our families to have to drive across our school boundaries to for the preschool program. Sorry, preschool TK program. And so with the way that we implemented the TK program this year, and because our numbers were in such flux right up until the very beginning of the school year, there wasn't a lot of opportunity for the YMCA to have advance notice for how we're going to operate the program. And they, of course, need to have a certain number of participants in their before aftercare programs to be able to operate. And so with the way that we've operationalized, when we did have the majority of the students on one campus, or it was a TKK combo in previous years, that did afford the opportunity or have enough families who needed the daycare option. So with the way that it was split out, it just wasn't feasible for the YMCA to operate the aftercare. So as soon as we knew this would be a problem, the YMCA and the district started conversation to figure out a way to support ensuring that our families with TK students had the opportunity for the aftercare. And so in looking at a viable option with supporting our families as well as our students to be in school, because in some cases, the families would have withdrawn their kids, and that would have meant one less year of education. So as you may, I know you all know this, but for any members of the community, our district must operate TK and K programs, but they happen to be optional in terms of families sending their children to those programs. We also know that having the children begin to be educated at the earliest possible stage provides the best possible hopes for their futures. And so with this, we entered into a potential solution, which is rent forgiveness for the YMCA. The families are still paying for the aftercare services for their kids, but to offset the costs that the YMCA would have to incur based on the number of families participating by having their employees extend their hours, which luckily, it's the most amazing thing how in spite of everything with COVID, the ability for people to step up and to help support. And so they luckily didn't have to hire any additional staff. They just needed to be able to pay the employees for that additional time that they're going to be operating the TK program. And so by what the YMCA is looking at is taking a look at the way this is operating through December. And so we would do a rent forgiveness from October through December. They have already paid September. So this would be October through December, and then taking a look at it and revisiting it for the spring semester. So this would be just a rent forgiveness until December, and then we'll revisit it in January. And I just want to see, Chris, do you have anything that you want to add before we see? Not at this time. Okay.
No, you did a great job.
Thank you. So any questions that the board might have around this or comments?
The only additional comment that I wanted to make is I know that the YMCA all last year was a really great partner with the learning hubs last year and supporting, and they've been a really strong district partner going through all of the COVID. And I know that the kind of the unfinished learning or unstarted learning for our youngest learners, you know, is that the younger learners are the ones that statistically, I believe, have had a greater impact in terms of COVID has really impacted a lot of the kindergarten, pre-K, the young students. And as you mentioned, in terms of didn't start school. So I really appreciate both the relationship continuation and support with YMCA to be able to support our younger learners in that learning environment, so that I think it's going to be a real support for our community to have those young learners have that strong during school, and then the continuation, because the YMCA can kind of continue their learning in that after school environment.
And they do. In this past year, now again, it was my first year as superintendent last year. And in my previous role, I didn't really have an understanding of the full support of the YMCA program as a whole. And as you said, Shelley, the support they provided during COVID to have students be able to have a place to go, and to be able to just the support for the family so they could continue the work, the support for the students to continue their learning. The support that the YMCA does provide students does extend their learning.
Yeah.
And so for our TK program and for any of our grade levels of kids who participate, it's not just a place to go and hang out. It is really a place to go and have continued academic support, and also that social emotional opportunity and mental health well-being by being surrounded by amazing staff members that they employ. It's a fabulous partnership indeed.
This is Ryan. For those who haven't used the service directly, I can tell you, as someone who put both my kids through the Y, it was vast. It was amazingly it was a very popular program at Manor. In fact, it was such a big program that if you didn't sign up right away, you know, you really were kind of in a bind, and they went bent over backwards to help a lot of people. Excuse me. And I think that they are much part of the community and the after school program as we would ever hope to have. So if we can help them, I think it's a great thing to do.
Any other questions? Can take a bit of a pause. All right. Then we can entertain a motion on the recommended approval of the rent relief. Anyone wanna?
I'll make a motion to approve this, Ryan.
I'll second it.
Great. Motion and a second to approve the rent relief. And Ryan.
Aye.
Rachel.
Aye.
Wesley.
Aye.
Marie.
Aye.
And Shelley. Aye. All right.
Thank
you all for those agenda items under E, presentation and action items. So now we are pretty much right on schedule at 8:40 with the consent actions. And I believe we are pulling consent item F3. Thank you.
Yes, the consolidated application. What we realized after putting this up is that we did not update the element related to the background for that item, and forgot to attach the CARS report. And so we'd like to bring this back once we have a chance to provide you a full background related to the consolidated application. So this will be coming back to you on consent at the we're in September 28th board meeting. But the rest of the items we would like to leave on in case any of you have any questions or would like to pull.
Is there any other modifications to the consent or clarifications before we open for a motion for all of them? Nope. All right. Appreciate the attention to detail, Marcy, in catching that lack of attachment, since we don't want to be adopting things that aren't attached. So thank you for just noticing that and pulling that item. So we'll come back to it.
I'll
right.
make a motion that we approve all of them except for item 3.
Great.
And I second.
All right. Motion and a second. So we'll vote. Rachel,
Aye.
Marie,
Aye.
Shelley, I, Ryan,
Aye.
and Wesley.
Aye.
Great. Our consent agenda or consent items are approved. And we can go on to board business. So we've got committee updates and reports from trustees. Does anybody want to jump in with any committee?
I will start.
Great.
For the committee, I attended the early morning E2, which was the committee in regard to
Efficiency and effectiveness.
yes, efficiency and effectiveness. Thank you.
It was an early meeting.
It was an early meeting, which is okay when your dogs wake you up at 6 a.m. It's not as early as you may think. So, but it was interesting. It's apparently the group has been meeting for a few years, and there were some new members. So it was more of a get to know you, get to see what's going on, and I was still trying to kind of understand what it was all about more than anything. So my report back is limited until I get a better handle on really exactly the motivations of the group and what they're trying to achieve. Although they mentioned their goal was to get more people and they wanted more participation in the group. So I thought that was interesting enough. I know that they want more superintendents. They want more trustees. They want more people to be able to spread the messages. So whatever their message is becoming, it's probably behooves us to get as many interested sets of ears involved to find out motivations and how it can implement kind of some of its goals. So that was really interesting. But as far as, a report, I don't really report too much because I like to get a better grip on exactly what the group is trying to achieve before I did that. And I don't know if this is the time to talk about the back to school night. Is that not the time?
That probably, hold on a second, would go in.
The updates at the beginning.
Yeah, probably this is a good example, probably a good example of an update, a board update in the beginning, or board announcements. So normally like under D2, under board announcements, that normally, but since we didn't do it, go for it.
I didn't want to slow the flow, but I'll tell you right now that the back to school that I was part of at White Hill last week was absolutely amazing. And I've been to them before and it was the same type of format. And I still find myself sitting in a classroom, singing songs with a bunch of parents in chorus and working out a math problem in math class. And when the parents, they don't know, most people don't always know I'm a board member and I'm just a participant. And it was infectious. The program that's going on over there, if you ever really want to know what's going on in your kids' classrooms, I can't think of a better way to really show it. And it's infectious, and every parent in between every session was just chatting about how amazing it is. And I just can't think of a better way to celebrate the stuff that parents don't see. And I'm sure that the teachers know how good they are, and maybe the school principal and assistant principal and staff know how good they are, but the parents really don't get an idea. In most back to schools, when I was young and I went to back to schools, they certainly weren't like this. And I highly encourage everybody to go to that, whether you have a kid in that program or not, if you really want to know what the Ross Valley School District is about, and you really want to know about what White Hill is about. You just got to walk through a couple hours at that program and really get it. It was absolutely amazing. And I'm glad I snuck my report in.
Thank you. I would say here, I always appreciate the walking the talk. In the learn by doing is part of the classroom, and it shows up in their back to school night because the parents are learning about back to school by doing, not just by wandering around and looking. It's not passive, it's active, which totally represents the educational program of learning by doing. So right on, Ryan.
In
Thanks.
fact, me and Trustee Pratt found each other next to each other in a desk. At one of them, it was pretty fun.
Yeah. And since we're talking about it now, I will echo what Ryan had to say, and maybe some of the other trustees have had the experience of being over there at back to school night, and it's changed over the course of the years. And I really like the format as it is now, because it is very interactive and you get to meet people. You end up sitting next to people who your kids might not even know one another, and then you get to meet people, and it is an infectious environment, and it's a lot of fun. I got a chance to see Marcy and others over there, and it was awfully nice to have a event like that when we weren't able to do it in the past because of the pandemic. So it was a special night, and people were very upbeat, and it was a lot of fun.
Great.
And to add to that, I sat next to Rachel in a couple of those classes because our kids are in the same classes. Yeah, like 4 classes together. It's hard to avoid each other, Rachel. So we also had a lot of fun without seeing you, Ryan and Wesley, but we had fun ourselves. That's what. So
Oh, very good. Very good.
Yeah, it was a great night.
great
And
night.
so was the elementary one that I went to.
Yeah, yeah, same thing. Wade Thomas was awesome as well.
All right. Thanks, Ryan, for putting that in there. Any other committee updates or
Well,
committee
actually, I
reports?
have
Marie,
a
go ahead.
committee
Yep.
update from the JLAC.
Great, go. Yeah.
So I'm going to read an update that I've sent previously to Marcia. In general, I just sent my notes after the meeting so that it's kind of all organized. So let me tell you a little bit about what we talked about. The first one was around some good news coming from the state that the normal revenues are coming through different allotment than before, like due to COVID, but that the latest news is that the revenue is coming higher than one expected. So what is going to happen to this money? We still don't know what's going to happen to the money, but we don't even know if the governor would be in January, but the revenues are holding strong, which should be some potential good news in the spring. And hopefully public schools will get a pass at that. There is a lot happening in the independent study, just so much that is kind of very overwhelming. There is a lot talked about more documentation required, like written contract between district and student family. Like really, it felt like a burden on top of a burden and a lot of work to implement independent study and to do that right, and for the district to track that. So I want to thank the team working on that, because it's definitely a lot of requirement there to report that the right way. There was a lot of conversation around the fact that for this year and this year only, substitute teachers can serve 60 days in any given assignment, instead of like the traditional would be, if I recall, it would be 30 days, and for general education, and I think 20 days for special education. So I think that was definitely something put in place to help the fact that we are short in staff, and I think Marcia, has alluded to that in the past. So there was a lot of talk about that, and there is some legislation passed to ease that, to make sure that we really can have access to substitute teachers longer. That was great news. Something for us, yeah, they were talked about implementation. Some of the grants for TK are available. So since this is something that probably, I'm sure Chris has his eye on, is that they start kind of opening up on, hey, to implement TK over the next 3-4 years, some money is going to start becoming available. So we need to keep an eye on that. And there was some news that I can't wait to hear more about around the fact that West Ed, which is an organization doing a lot of study and a lot of research, have done 2 studies, and they're coming out in October with some recommendation about special ed and funding of special ed, which has been a very big topic for a very long time. And something around the fact that at the time of the implementation of LCFF, there was some conversation around, should we also consider special ed students falling into the LCFF formula or being addressed at that time? And the idea really didn't completely drop off the radar. So I think it's all around, is it the good time to look again into more at, in a very yeah, in a good way to figure out how else can we fund special ed, as we know that's been underfunded, and there is some structural things that needs to happen in order to change that. So I look forward to hear about that October report, and if I see something that you have not received, I will definitely pass it on to you, because that could be big. The January budget could be impacted by that if it was kind of getting some traction. So that's something definitely we need to look into. And I'm going to finish with a couple of kind of not so good news. The first one is AB 438. So AB 438, I talked to you about it in the past, and you have seen article about it. This is not necessarily bad news per se, but it's something to know that is happening. This is the piece of legislation that create equity between classified and certificated employees, and allowing the layoff schedule. It's not bad per se. It's something to take into consideration, as it would impact a lot of the spring activity from both an HR perspective and also finance perspective. So if that is getting the traction that it seems to be having right now, this is definitely something that is going to be impacting Marcy and Chris quite a lot during the spring. So we'll keep an eye on that, because that will be something to plan and some more work. And that's it for tonight. Any question?
Thank you, Marie. Keeping a lookout on the horizon there with all that coming down.
Yeah.
Rachel or
Yeah, I had a guest update.
okay.
So just had a recent board meeting. They are, from now going forward, they're going to be on the first Thursday of the month at 7 o'clock. They're keeping them on Zoom for now, but they're looking at possibly in the future switching depending on how the COVID situation goes. They voted in some new members. They're focused on, and I'm sure if you went to a back to school night, you saw that they're very much focused on getting the YES story out and explaining to families and people in the community what YES does, what they're meant to do, and how important it is to support them and why we need funding. And so they're kind of revamping to be very much focused on being the fundraising arm for the school district right now. They gave us a financial overview. Right now we have, because things were so bad with the COVID year and people just weren't able to donate and they didn't hit their budget last year and their goals. YES has been distilled down to funding art, music, and theater right now. Theater tends to self-fund itself, which is one of the reasons they're able to continue it. But YES was not able to fund library books or STEAM or the White Hill clubs. Those are still being offered to students in our district, though, because the district has picked up the slack on that, because we do feel it's important that those things are offered to students. But it's something looking forward that they're going to have to reevaluate their fundraising goals and what they're able to provide us. They have lowered their fundraising goal for the year this year. So it is lower to kind of reflect the fact that, people are having harder times now. And that's across the entire county. To help with that, they have revamped their fundraising page on their website, or their donation page. So it's easier to access. Venmo is now an option, which I guess a lot of people were asking for. So that's fantastic. There's also a new corporate matching widget, which is really super easy. You put in your company's name and it tells you if your company has a match. And I guess some of the other districts fundraising groups around here have had a lot of luck with that, getting corporate donations to help out. They're probably going to still do their spring and fall fundraiser challenges to try and get participation up and to try and hit certain goals. And that's something, if you've had a kid in the district, you're probably familiar with. They do need a business partner. So they're looking for a person who's interested in trying to find businesses to talk to and try and get them involved in funding and helping support our district in one way or another. They are going forward with book fairs this year, which is kind of going to be a little challenging since there's not supposed to be indoor gatherings of 100 or more. A lot of the schools are leaning online. I believe Manor, they were talking about doing it outside. So that's still going to be offered kind of. I know the schools stagger those throughout the year, so I'm not sure what individual schools or when. Battle of the Bands is booked for March if everything is safe with COVID. So they're getting in line to get the bands going for that. So if you're a parent and you have a band, reach out to somebody. Yes. And then we got art, music, and theater updates from those different programs. Art it was fun to hear at White Hill, they're doing 90-minute block classes. And the teachers really like it because it gives them a chance to get really deep into the lessons and even teach multiple lessons to the kids in one class period. And so they're really getting a chance to get in the art. It's not as quick as normal with the other schedule. So they're really happy about that at White Hill. And then there was some student artwork around district students featured on Safe Routes to School posters. So yay, good job, kids. And then at elementary K-5, they're getting classes every week in art. And they're doing a lot of social emotional learning lessons and community building routines to try and get the kids like just kind of adjusted to being in classroom again and having that little bit of art and interest in things and something just to give them a choice of using different media and hoping to get more artwork back to families throughout the year. So you don't get one giant bag of it. And then for music, they were just talking about like what a great diverse set of teachers that they have right now, and that musical theater is going and it's very popular. There's jazz bands, music club, percussion clubs, or things that they're talking about doing. In K-4, they're doing general music, and the fifth graders have chosen their instruments or chorus, and that has been going on. And it's been so much better having in person for the fifth graders compared to last year trying to learn an instrument over Zoom. It's just, it works so much better. Even if they have to play outside, it's still challenging, but it's much better than Zoom for those students. And so everybody's been very pleased with how that's going. And then for theater, they've picked plays for all the schools. They're doing early registrations, like far earlier than normal, just to kind of get interest up. And so they know who to expect and kind of planning for all that ahead of time. There was some shout out for Samantha Nickel, who's teaching the musical theater as an elective. Apparently she's drummed up a lot of interest in that. And I guess that they had their auditions this week and that went really well. So I'm excited to see what they end up producing this year. And then the elementary schools are also doing plays. And so their registrations, they're planning to open those around October 1st, I believe. So lots of stuff going on, a little different than in prior years, but still lots of fun art going on in various forms, musical and otherwise.
Thank you, Rachel. Very
Thank
exciting.
Rachel. I'm glad to hear there's more activity. Last year, it felt last year for all, you know, as we know, things were a little quiet. So it's nice to hear that things are moving again. Let's see, Wesley, did you have any or?
Well, last night there was a JIPA meeting that I was not able to attend.
Okay.
Perhaps Marcy can give an update. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Marcy.
No, absolutely. I was going to do it under superintendent, but I can do it now. That's just fine. So last night at the JIPA meeting, one of the agenda items was to take a look at the ridership, and the number of passes sold, and to take a look at the breakdown of any of the free and reduced cost passes as well. And what they offered this year was a reduced amount for families that chose the later bus route that leaves White Hill. So as we know, the yellow bus serves Hidden Valley and White Hill. So at this time, there are some students on the wait list for some of the bus routes at White Hill, and at Hidden Valley, there are no wait lists at all. So all the families who wanted to purchase a bus pass for their students, children have been able to do so. They talked about wanting to, so last spring, members of the JIPA, Town of Fairfax, and our county supervisor's office, they went out and actually took tallies of walkers and riders and that kind of a thing, because they wanted to get a baseline for this year of looking at the bus service resuming, that what would still be the interest of bus service with the number of families who are choosing other methods to get to school. So, and let me go back. Because of COVID, each bus typically will hold 57 students, and they are having reduced capacity to 50. And so that potentially is having an impact, because that's with 6 buses running in the morning for White Hill and 5 in the afternoon, with each bus having 7 fewer students on it. What would the potential impact of that be? So looking at going back out to do another count but also to do a survey of families. So they're looking at creating a survey to find out how families are getting to school. There seems to be, from the initial interest survey that went out for purchasing bus passes, the number of actuals that came about were actually fewer. So they ended up with, originally, the response was more interest in morning routes, but as it's turned out, the morning routes have fewer actual bus pass purchases than the afternoon routes. And so they want to see what's the reasoning for that change from what the initial thought would be. And also a wondering, because this year, due to as has been mentioned, with Whitehill, did change their bell schedule. So they changed their master schedule to 90-minute blocks, 4 days a week, and then all periods on Wednesday. And then Hidden Valley also changed its bell schedule. So Hidden Valley and Whitehill get out at the same time. And a potential wondering is there an impact to interest in bus service because of the ending times? So for the time that the bus leaves the Hidden Valley and then can wind its way up to Whitehill, because they do pick up the Hidden Valley students first, and then they go to Whitehill. As I took an initial look at the data that was provided through one of the slide decks last night, I don't believe it's an impact. We'll have to hear and learn more, because the buses that are at Whitehill that are more heavily impacted are not the ones that travel up or down Butterfield. And so I don't know, there's that wondering, then could it be that the families didn't purchase passes at all? So it's not that the buses are impacted, but did families not purchase because of needing to ensure their elementary age student and their middle school student would have a bus ride, and so on. So there's more information to be revealed there. And I think that is about it in terms of the kind of the highlights of last night's meeting. Our next meeting will be in January.
All right.
Thank you, Marcy.
Sure.
Yeah. Any other updates, committee updates? I don't have a committee update, although I did participate in a workshop this afternoon with DWK Legal Counsel on back in-person board meetings and a possible action by the governor to amend the Brown Act, because as we know, we're all able to do this remotely because of an executive order, which was ending October 1st. Which would then revert everything back to the standard Brown Act compliance for board meetings. But because COVID has remained a concern in our lives, looking at a possible action to make, not revert back to the executive order, but to make some amendments. So Marcy and I were on that. And I won't say any more because our next item is going to be about resuming in-person board meetings. So we can talk more detail about it then. Anything else before we move on to that item?
We have one more before we get to that item, which is revisiting committee assignments.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, then let's do that.
Okay.
Yeah, because I know that we want to, this is, again, just for everybody to look at the committee assignments, where we're all assigned, and then we realized that, well, I'll let you describe it, Marcy. Go ahead.
Sure. Just as Shelley was saying, when our new trustees were seated after the November election, the board finalized its committee assignments, and we did a full 12-month calendar of committee assignments. And what we learned, both Shelley and I being new to this and not having gone through a full cycle, is that historically in our district, our trustees have, when we have had a board election, you all do the committee assignments through the remainder of that school year, and then come back to revisit committee assignments at the beginning of a new school year. And that way there would be continuity of committee membership throughout the entire school year, as opposed to getting just up and running with your committees and then having to potentially, if anybody were interested in switching gears midway through, and then having to start a new committee. So it provides the board continuity for entire school year. So we thought that we would put this back on the agenda tonight to revisit committee assignments. So included as one of the attachments is the description of each of the committees. And something to note there is that historically in the delineation of how many trustee representatives and or representatives and alternates who sit on any of the committees, that is just a local determination. So if through any conversations, you all want to do more members on a particular committee or set up an alternate where one may not exist now, perfectly fine to do that. This just provides that kind of historical perspective and an overview of what is the purpose and kind of purview of each of the committees that are district-wide and or county-wide. And then the next attachment there was the final committee assignments for 21-22. And the third attachment is that same committee assignments that were determined last February, but with the meeting dates that, as far as we know them this year, some of the meeting dates haven't yet been determined, but we put in as many as we can to try to help you navigate, given you all have busy lives and so on. You might need to have a sense of when do the committees run and operate, so that you would know, can you continue on a committee and or do you potentially want to take on a different one? So with that, I think we'll just leave it with, is there any interest in changing up your committee assignments? Do you all like the idea of sticking with a committee assignment for an entire school year? And this could go tonight. It doesn't require action. The only item that requires action is in December when we do the annual organization. That is where you all determine your board president, the clerk, and the member to the Marin County School Boards Association, MCSBA. But other than that, committee assignments do not require action, just determination of them. So if anybody would like to start.
And the only other thing I want to add, just like Brian had mentioned about the committees and the alternates, is that you might have a primary, but if the alternate wants to attend the meetings, you can do that. Or if you're not even assigned to one, but say you're the primary and you know there's going to be a topic coming up that you know one of your colleagues is interested in, you can, as long as it's okay with that committee, you can invite them to attend as well. So it's not, the only thing we have to watch out for is 3 of us showing up at once, because that would be a Brown Act issue. But 2 of us on any of these committees is perfectly fine. So just because you're an alternate doesn't mean you can only go if the primary can't go. Just want everybody to know that.
And we're not, suggesting that you continue to do more, because you're already doing enough just by being a trustee. And so taking on committee assignments is an added responsibility as well. But we certainly appreciate it for our local as well as our county committees.
I think Marcy, you're definitely onto something. This is Ryan, in regard to a full school year of participation in the same unit. The problem comes is that we have an election in November every 2 years, in which case, someone's going to be on for 2 months and there's going to be a natural switch anyway. So I don't know how we navigate that. It's just kind of how it is. Also, I remember when I stepped on to both my town council position and then to this position for the first time, you walk in and then all of a sudden, people are throwing jobs at you and you really don't have your head around, and then they throw the budget in there and you're just kind of swimming and it's just kind of very overwhelming. And I almost think that there may be, in my case, there was an advantage to settling in for a couple months, and there was an advantage to not necessarily, jumping in and just getting the default assignments that the person who, termed out, picked up. Sometimes those assignments can be pretty big and pretty overwhelming. And for a new trustee, it was pretty overwhelming and I remember saying specifically, I really like all you guys, but I can't take on anything more until I understand exactly what I'm taking on. Mm-hmm. And so with that in mind, I don't have a decision or a choice. I just wanted to put out that those were overwhelming moments for me in both positions.
I think that's really helpful, Ryan. And I think what we could do is stay with, unless somebody wants to change something around, we would stay with these assignments through and then revisit them in August. So next August before the school year rather than September. revisit them in August. And then, as you mentioned, we would need to then revisit them the following November as new board members came on. And maybe at that time, if that's the right timing, but whenever the year is where there's a November election and you have new board members coming on in January, then we would have like a 6-month and then 2 years, 2 years, 6 months, 1 year, a 1 year and a 6 month, and then a 1 year and a 6 months, depending on if it's an election year. So I think that's a good idea.
I mean, remember, these are volunteer jobs, like Marcy said, and at the end of the day, there's nothing like jumping into something that's just almost as large with if you want to be responsible to the committee and responsible to the position, the community, and the board. Sometimes it can be a little bit tough to navigate that, because some people, well, I think I kind of mentioned it. It just can be very overwhelming. So with that in mind, if someone's going to term out and you change them in August, that gives the person terming out 2 months. Or maybe the standing board members pick up the heavier lifting and leave a lighter weight job for incoming trustee. I don't know. It's tough. It's tough.
Yep. It'll be good to be.
But we're not in election year, so I'm interested in continuing what I studied last year, at least for this year, because it was not even a full year. So I'm interested in staying.
I am also. I've kind of gotten the balance of it, so.
Yeah.
I'm good. Ryan, are you and Wesley? How you guys doing?
I'm comfortable with my committee assignments.
Yeah, I am as well. And I think there's actually something to say for, sticking with it. You really start to make your headway in your second season, so to speak, if you really want to make a difference. And the first 6 months is just understanding the players and what's going on. And then, if you really want to do a good job, I think we should try to stick with them. I have no problem with mine as well.
Great.
The only one thing I want to just add is when Ryan gave his update about the E2, I always forget the first E.
Efficiency and
And
effectiveness.
effectiveness. Thank you. Is that they are looking for additional membership. So if in participation, so if anybody else is interested in adding that, no pressure at all. I just want to put it out there. That is as an option.
They put it out there for superintendents too.
Oh, I'm happy to go. I'm absolutely happy, but just tonight it's all about you.
I'm not a morning person, but if I get myself up that early, you know what, Ryan, I think that they've put out, because I have gone to those meetings in the past and I think I'm on the emailing list, but anyhow, if you could send a copy of whatever little descriptions and or calendar of meetings and stuff to Marcy to send out to all of us, and that might help people get up to speed.
It is on our third attachment tonight. So it's over off to the right for 21-22. So they do have their meetings set. They are 7:30 to 8:30 a.m.
Yeah, they are back to back with the JLAC meeting.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And so they have one October, November, December, February, March, and May.
Okay.
So it is a meeting, it is a committee with a lot of meeting dates too.
And I think they have some of their topics already parceled out on those meeting dates. I think I remember, Ryan, you might have seen it. There was a document that said on these.
Yeah, that's it as well. They have some topics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, would you like, Shelley, I can add you as an alternate or even a second, even if you don't go?
Yeah, you can go ahead and add me as that.
As a second?
Ryan, as a second, but Ryan, I'm not letting you off the hook. You still have to.
No. In fact, I thought it would be daunting. And then I realized, I mean, especially if they're online, if they're Zoom type meetings. I mean,
did they say whether they were going to stay online or move into person?
They didn't. And I dared not ask, because it really was okay to just sit there and have a lot of coffees and a lot of, I think it's the kind of thing that I think you can best be done like it is, to be honest with you. So.
Okay. Go ahead, Marcy, just put me on there and you could put both of us if you want to give it a go too. And we can just try and make sure we get the emails. So.
Yeah. And I'm happy to join that countywide committee as well as continue on as Golden Bell representative for Ross Valley, which I've been on for probably 8 or 10 years now. So I'm happy to continue on with that one as well.
Do you want to just put your name on our document so we know?
Sure.
For historic memory's sake, so we don't forget next time we look at this?
Yeah.
That'd be great. All right. Then we shall carry on as we are.
Great. Thank you.
Our assignments
All right.
until August. We'll put this on the agenda
Next
schedule.
August, yep.
Our parking lot of agenda items for August, next August. And now,
All right, our
board meetings.
next item, very exciting. So with the stay-at-home order that went into place in March of 2020, our board moved to remote meetings only. And as Shelley mentioned earlier on, the ability to continue remote meetings is ending on September 30th, which means that as of our October 12th meeting, we need to be able to consider how we're going to be operating our meetings going forward. As Shelley mentioned, there is Assembly Bill AB 361 that's pending. The legislature has already approved it. It is now waiting for governor approval, and he has until October, the middle of October, to be able to finalize the approval of AB 361. So what the emergency order allowed is for some aspects of the Brown Act to be relaxed, such as the ability to offer remote meetings without having to allow the public to attend those remote locations. So as we all know, we've been in our various locations, homes, offices, wherever we may be. And once we come back, or once this ends, then we do need to resume in-person board meetings, which means that all trustees and presenters would need to be in the same location. So the proposal that we have in analyzing, as Shelley mentioned earlier, we did a webinar today. Shelley and I have attended other webinars in order to prepare for the resumption of in-person board meetings. And AB 361, sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit, allows for some continued flexibilities, because as with things that have come along through COVID, we have seen opportunities despite that global pandemic that we've been all facing. And so staff has taken a look at what might be the best way to resume in-person meetings, and to look at potentially any other changes that might be coming down the pike if AB 361 goes into play. So at this time, what we anticipate is our board meeting in October, which is October 12th, that we would have that meeting in person here at the district office. Now, and that all elements of pre-pandemic board meeting operation would resume. So what that would look like for anybody who is new and or just as refresh the memories, because as we learned with the starting of the new school year, not having done an in-person school year for over a year, a few of our details were lost. So just to refresh, is that we would be here at the district office, and that would be our most common location. Of course, there are some times when, if we're anticipating a board agenda item to have a large audience, we would then notice that that board meeting might be held, for example, at a school's multipurpose room, which has a lot more space than our district office board meeting room. And then members of the public would also be able to participate in person. Anyone who would like to provide a public comment on items on the agenda or not on the agenda. Now, of course, during a regular board meeting, folks can make public comments on items on or not on the agenda. And for special meetings, the public comment option is limited to only items on the agenda. And public comments, so like since we have been doing our remote meetings, public comments have been provided via email. You all take a look at them and you review them in advance. When we resume in person, public comments need to be given before an open or closed session and or during an item that's considered for the board's consideration or approval. So as you all discuss items now, any member of the public who is participating in the meeting would also have the opportunity to provide public comment prior to the board taking action or moving on to another agenda item. And then the also continuation would be that as the pre-pandemic times, The board meetings will be audio recorded, and they will be posted to the recording will be posted to our website within 72 hours following the meeting. But what we have also been able to appreciate through COVID is that some folks would like to remain or be able to tune in remotely. So we would recommend that we also continue to live stream the board meeting. So this is the new item. We would live stream the board meeting so that folks can tune in from home. Of course, if they want to give a public comment, they would have to review the agenda and anticipate wanting to provide a public comment so they can be here in person. And so what a person who is tuning in at home would see is, or remotely, wherever they are, would be the screen. So like right now, I'm sharing my screen. They would be able to see the agenda item. They would be able to see any presentation materials that were put up on the screen, and they would be able to hear all of the presenters, the deliberations that the board would take, any public comments that anybody in person would be providing. They'd be able to listen in. And then, of course, anybody who can't attend a board meeting, whether it's via the live stream or to be in person, of course, just like we used to do, they would be able to listen to the audio recording and be able to access it that way. So it still provides more opportunity for being able to see the goings on of the trustees meetings. And that would be the recommendation. So I know there may be questions around any of those elements of it. Oh, one other last thing. Of course, with in-person board meetings, we are so we're not a school setting being here at a district office, but we are a business in that sense. So we would be following county guidelines. And right now we know the county guidelines are masking indoors. And then there may be other elements that we would need to put in place as we see for our local determination to prevent the spread of COVID. But as of right now, if we're seeing that we've been very successful at some of the activities we have held. We've already talked tonight about back to school nights and so on. And so we do believe that if we follow the health and safety protocols that are outlined by our medical professionals, our public health departments, that we can do so successfully and not run the risk of jeopardizing anybody's health or safety. So that would be staff's recommendation, and just want to open it up for a conversation with the trustees to see what do you think of the plan, any other elements to consider.
I also just wanted to clarify that the new regulation, that the offering the live stream opportunity for people who are not physically in person at the meeting to view and listen, and then offering the recording afterwards. Those are both just good best practices that have emerged out of COVID, but they are not required. So we're following along with what it seems like. They did like a little poll in the workshop that we went to, and it seems like most districts are retaining some of the features to allow the public to really at least be able to listen to live and or recorded the deliberations of the trustees without having to physically be there. What is required is we're going to go back to what would be considered the standard in-person Brown Act in-person board meetings, and the cadence that we've all seen those to be in terms of the public comment, where you have an agenda item, you have a presentation, you have public comment, you have deliberation. So we'll go back to that in-person cadence of in-person public comment. Now, again, that doesn't preclude any member of the public who wants to tell us what they think about a topic that they know is coming up on our board meeting to send us an email and communicate their thoughts and ideas to us via email at any time. It's just not considered public comment the way that it's considered public comment now. So it will be distributed to trustees so that, you know, it would be
Posted to the agendas.
exactly. It'll be board communication. So the public is welcome. This adds an additional way for the public to communicate because we're going to go back to the in-person public comment.
And let me just also add to that, that under AB 361, even with the flexibilities that are provided, it is not going to be acceptable at all to continue to do public comment by email. So that's not an option. And we know that here in our district that having the staffing or the technology to be able to provide the opportunity for remote access to public comments, we just don't have the capacity to do that. But we do know, as Shelley said, that there are plenty of opportunities for members of the public to engage with our board and make their thoughts and ideas known. And so as a longstanding practice in our district, the communications with the board have been on the board agendas, and it is a way for folks to access and for all trustees, because sometimes not all trustees are included on those emails. But since trustees cannot act outside of board meetings, they cannot make any determinations. It is another way to keep the transparency of board deliberations and considerations present to be in compliance with the Brown Act.
And I also just wanted to add that I really appreciated in the webinar that, again, the consideration is transparency and access and really providing as much as we can to the public in terms of being able to witness our deliberations, engage in our deliberations, have input. So that's the overriding thinking process on going back to being in person. Rachel or anyone?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, this is Rachel, that I think it's helpful to have these extra ways to communicate with us and have the ability to listen live. Because I know that there's been a lot of families that I've talked to who do listen to like one section that they're interested in and then they tune out. But I think it's been helpful because then they don't have to actually physically drive, listen to it, and then come and try and guess when we're going to talk about it. Like sometimes deliberations for something might take longer or a presentation might go over. So I think having that ability to just listen to what they need to hear will be really helpful, and it will increase people's, participation.
Great. Marie or Ryan or Wesley?
Nothing for Ryan.
Yeah.
Nothing either. Look forward to have our first meeting in person.
Yeah.
All right. So if there happens to be anything that comes our way, we learn anything more between now and the October 12th meeting, then we'll provide an update on September 28th. And then also we will begin working on revamping our board agenda to note the resuming the in-person meetings and some of the changes that will need to take place on our agendas because of that. So we will get started.
And the only other thing I want to say that I did appreciate about the approach that's being taken is that should something else happen unexpectedly with the pandemic or otherwise, where we make a determination, there was one section of it, is that if the board determines that for the health and safety of the community, we need to go back to virtual all of a sudden, we can make a board decision to do that. And then we would have to follow protocol in terms of how the public engages if we go back to all virtual. And I believe that that this amendment would last through 2024. And so if something does happen in our world or the pandemic where 1 month, so it allows for that flexibility without the state having to keep going back and forth on executive orders, and then they expire and new ones and expiring. So we will have that flexibility going forward should there be another emergency or a change. Again, there's different protocols we'd have to follow, but that was another part of it. So, all right.
Thank you.
And we're moving on to approval of the meeting minutes for August 24th, 2021. Are there any amendments or edits or changes on that meeting minutes? I will wait and listen to see if anyone has any. I'm not hearing any. All
I'll
right.
go ahead and move to approve the minutes for August 24, 2021.
Okay.
I'll second it. Oh, Rochambeau.
Who won that one, Rachel or Marie?
Rachel.
Rachel. Okay.
It was her birthday last week, so she won. Happy birthday.
Great. All right. So we have a motion and a second. Wesley,
Aye.
birthday girl Rachel,
Aye.
Marie,
Aye.
Shelley, I, and Ryan.
All right.
All right. Thank you. And here we are on to superintendent and cabinet report updates.
All right, we know Chris is probably extremely worn out from doing all of his budgeting. I know his desk was piled full of paper and reports and all that. So Chris, is there anything else besides, now that you have the budget worked on, anything else that you'd like to add from business services, M&O, or anything else?
Just to dovetail on something you spoke about earlier, having to do with the water bottle filling stations, the maintenance department has been working really hard to get at a minimum 2 water bottle filling stations at each of the elementaries. And we have added a third to the campus at White Hill. And the third for White Hill is down on the field, on the athletic field. So that does provide us water down for the students that are in PE, and also with the 2 water bottle filling stations on each of the campuses, the elementaries, that allows kids in different areas of the campus to easily fill their bottles and go back to class. And so they've been working hard on that. And with that, nothing else this evening.
Thank you. And Julia, one board meeting in a very, very, very long time that you haven't had a presentation item. I'm sure I know you've been very busy. Any updates from curriculum and instruction?
Sure, just a little bit of equity update. So yesterday we had our first Delight, our teacher leadership group meeting of the year, and I'd say 12 teachers met with our full administrative team. And we spent the full 2 hours of that meeting working on our racial equity action plan. And it was really a wonderful meeting, and the teachers really dove in and provided a lot of enthusiastic feedback. Everyone's super on board, but also digging into, really how to move forward with these actions and make them impactful. So that was great. And next week on Wednesday, we have our first district grade level team meeting of the year, which is when we use our Wednesday afternoon time for professional development. And our book bundle leads will be leading each grade level in sharing and launching the implementation of our social justice book bundles. And these are the diverse books that are aligned with the Learning for Justice, which used to be Teaching for Tolerance, for those who know that title, social justice standards. And then also on that very same day, we have our first parent guardian equity team meeting of the year, which we're also looking forward to. Prior to that, we'll be sharing the current draft of the racial equity action plan with parents and guardians, and so that they can come to that meeting prepared to talk about the district's actions moving forward. So lots of good stuff going on there. And then also in the midst of pulling together, or reconvening, I should say, our NGSS science adoption team for elementary. We were in the middle of our second pilot when COVID hit 18 months ago, and didn't feel like we could continue piloting in a virtual mode and really make any sense of it. And I tentatively reached out to this team of teachers, and most of them are right on board and like, yep, let's do it. Let's move forward. We need it. So that's kind of exciting as well. And I think that's all I have for the moment. Lots of things going on, but that's it for tonight.
Thank you, Julia. All right, and Eric, any other updates? I know you had some agenda items tonight, but from student services.
Absolutely. First of all, I want to just welcome and congratulate our new Student Services Administrative Assistant, Meredith Woodward, who is in a transition process now from her current role as admin assistant at Manor School. And of course, it's a big loss for Manor, but she's continuing to support that site as we look for a great replacement for her. And it's not just a benefit to student services, but to all 5 schools and beyond, that she'll be contributing as a member of our district office team. So I just want to welcome and congratulate her. And of course, thank her for her 3+ years of service at Manor Elementary, one of our spectacular schools. On the English language learner front, our amazing team is starting to administer the initial LPACs this fall, as we always do at the first part of the school year. And also working on a project in collaboration with our technology department and our curriculum department to make sure that we have Spanish translated report cards in Aries. So we anticipate that those will be ready for publication, if you will, by T1. So we're feeling really excited about our efforts to make sure that our platforms are multilingual. And I think that that's about it for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. And I just have to say, I was so excited to go back to the back to school nights. Our four of our elementaries had them on the same night, September 1st. And they did offer, since the majority of our schools were asking for just one parent to come to be in a classroom. And so I know families, the parent guardians split up if they had more than one child at a school or so on and so forth. But with that, because they could also Zoom in and see what was going on, there was more parking. So in years past, we had a heck of a time getting to all four schools. I managed to get to all four. Unfortunately, because I wanted to go to all four, I didn't get to go into every single one of the classrooms. And then White Hills last week, I did get into, I think I realized as I was leaving, because I gave a dad the wrong directions. So I chased him down to make sure he was headed in the right direction. So I ended up missing one room, but I did get into all at White Hill. And as has been already spoken about tonight, it was the back to school nights were they were awesome. They were a breath of fresh air. They were engaging. What was evident and palpable to me for every single one of the classrooms I was able to get into is every teacher's love and care and interest in the individual students and the engaging activities. So back to school nights have changed a lot since I was a teacher, and certainly since my kids were in our school district. And so the active interactive lessons, the parents getting a chance to talk and move about the rooms and to see and engage and to kind of get a sense of a moment in their children's day to see what they get. So back to school nights were awesome, and just looking forward to continuing the in-person opportunities and activities because it's great that our kids are getting to interact on campuses, but also for the opportunity for families, the parents, guardians, to be able to meet their children's families and also to see their friends, not just in activities that they engage in, but on our school campuses. So those were a great breath of fresh air and way to start the new school year. And independent study, we talked, Marie mentioned that a little bit. It is a little bit of a bear still, because although we have our students who want to participate in a virtual independent study in Novato Unified, participating that way, we also have the need to provide our students, when they have to quarantine or are sick, the opportunities. So just even yesterday, I saw some new information coming through, which if it gets approved they will be super helpful to be able to offer our kids that ability to continue their education and not just have to get a packet of work when they're home, just because we know the traditional independent study, and you all approved the revised board policy tonight. So that will allow us that flexibility to reduce independent study for what historically has been 5 days. That was by law. It had to be a minimum of 5 days. Now it's a minimum of 3. So that will be certainly helpful to all of our students. Back to school packets this year got a little bit of a late start going out because with all of the getting ready for the start of school, there was some little few things that were forgotten with making sure that Schoolmint was ready to go live. So those packets are just going home this week. Schoolmint's live now, so families can do their emergency cards, their annual notifications review. They get the yes information so that they can start donating. and all of that. And so I think that's about it for tonight. It's always busy, but extremely fun. I've never had a job that I didn't like, and this one is exactly one of those same jobs. I love getting up every morning and coming here to be supporting all of our schools and ensuring we keep moving forward. So I think with that, that's it for cabinet updates.
Great. Thank you. When is the next all school, not back to school night, obviously, but there's like the open houses. Do we have to wait all the way until May to go to open house?
Yes, there actually some schools do offer them earlier. So we have
We used
open
to
house.
have
earliest
outside
is in
in the
March.
winter.
Yeah,
What?
we have March 24th, March 31st, April 14th, and May 25th. So
Okay.
they're kind of all throughout. So what we're going to be starting to do next, which is before the open houses, is our preview nights, so that our families who will have entering students can come get to see and get to know the campuses. So school tours, those kinds of things will be starting up. So as we're just starting the new school year, we always start to plan for the
Right.
next. Yeah.
Exactly. So those preview nights will happen before March.
Yes, they definitely do, because they happen before our new student registration goes live, and which is January. So we host all the preview nights prior to that.
Excellent. Okay. On the horizon.
Yeah.
Any other questions more about anything that came up in the updates before we move to our wrap up? No.
We are not meeting next week, right? There was a possibility. We're not
Oh,
meeting
thank
next
you.
week. We meet in 2 weeks, right?
Yes, that is
Okay.
right. Yeah, we put that meeting in the calendar just as a placeholder.
Yeah.
Last year we had to add a couple, and we weren't sure at the time we did the board calendar adoption.
I just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
we double check on that one.
Yeah.
So the next meeting date is the September
28th.
Okay, and then the October one. Okay, great. Perfect segue into the future board topics and meeting things is when the next one is. Are there any other future board topics or anything else that came up for anyone that you want to make sure, like I just asked, in terms of kind of looking out ahead into the future? And Marcy, that was really helpful, of saying, okay, on the horizon are going to be these preview nights. And then before we know it, enrollment for next school year coming up in January. And then beyond that is the open houses. Are there any other questions about looking out on the horizon in that way? And as always, you can send topics to myself, or better, send them to Marcy. And we've got an agenda planning spreadsheet going where we put slot topics out for future agenda items and schedule them out appropriately time-wise. So,
Okay.
all right.
I can go home.
Hearing none, anything else in a meeting debrief or this? We have one more virtual, so we'll have one more virtual
One
meeting.
more virtual.
Yeah.
One more virtual. So maybe along the lines of future topics and board direction, at that final virtual meeting, in the section on the meeting debrief, it would be good to have just a moment to talk and maybe reflect on our experiences with these virtual meetings, and if there are certain things that worked for us that we want to kind of keep in mind as we come back in person. I think there's going to be a lot of readjusting to being in person, and it's going to be great to be in person, but maybe there's some stuff or some like board culture, board communication,
Yeah.
or things that we want to leave behind. So maybe we'll just
remote attendance or things like that. That's a good topic. Yeah.
just a moment for us to reflect as we move into transitioning. So put your thinking cap on that for next time in our I2 agenda item for meeting debrief. We'll do it then.
Great, thank you. I'll make sure it gets on the calendar so we don't forget.
Yeah, put on the agenda topics.
Yep.
All right. Well, it is 9:44, almost 9:45, and we are doing good. We didn't have to extend the meeting. It stayed on track, and I think I will adjourn the meeting and and see you all at the end of the month. Thank you so much. Adjourned at 9:44. All right.